Attorney General Nessel, I'll turn to you first. What are some of the things that you're able to do in the state, at least, to preserve abortion rights?
Well, one of the things that we did, honestly, in advance even of the Dobbs decision, was to fight against our 1931 zombie law that we knew would come back into effect in the event that Roe was overturned, which of course it was. So working together with Governor Whitmer, we were able to ensure that that law was stayed and never went into effect. And then we brought a ballot proposal in Michigan that passed in overwhelming numbers that codified Roe into the Michigan Constitution to ensure that we now have constitutionally protected reproductive rights, not just abortion, but birth control, the ability to manage a miscarriage, and fertility treatments as part of our Constitution in Michigan. We are protecting rights, not just for the folks who live here in Michigan, but for anyone who travels here as well.
And Attorney General Rosenblum, tell us about HB 2002 passed just this week in Oregon.
Right. Good morning. Well, this is a grim anniversary of the loss of access to abortion over a great swath of our country. And that, of course, includes miscarriage care and other types of pregnancy complications. So we knew, even though we had one of the best laws in the country, the Reproductive Health Equity Act, which passed in Oregon 5 years ago, at least, that we needed to do something more, that we saw what was coming, especially from the east. And when I say east, I mean the state of Idaho, which is just across the border from Oregon. And many of us in what we call blue states have states right next door where there are bans in place, or there were trigger laws that immediately triggered a ban, or Idaho is one of the worst. So we've passed a new law, which actually, as of just this week, just Wednesday, hasn't even been signed into law yet, which enhances our Women's Health Equity Act to ensure that providers, primarily providers, are protected. Look, they're my new heroes. The medical providers in the state of Oregon are ensuring that not only Oregonians, and they've always taken great care of our people here, but that anyone who comes to our state is going to have high level, the best quality abortion care, reproductive health care. And this law protects them. It protects them from Idaho trying to go after them for whatever they might do to those in our state. Obviously, we can't control what they do in Idaho, but we're doing our very best. We also have now laws that will protect people who go into our clinics. Believe it or not, there's still the possibility of obstruction at the clinic door. It seems like this is something from 50 years ago, but unfortunately that's fact. So I'm really proud of the new law that will soon be taking effect here in Oregon.
Symone Sanders Townsend, you can take the next question, but first, could you just talk about the politics of this and the political challenges and opportunities?
Well, Mika, I think on the politics of this, look, for 50 years, the Republican Party apparatus had been organizing to overturn Roe v. Wade. It's something you heard on the campaign trail from state legislative offices all the way up to the campaign trail for president. And when Roe was overturned, there was a celebration in the streets, if you will, from advocates, but elected officials were quite quiet. It is because it was similar, I think, to the Affordable Care Act. They, Republican Party apparatus organized for years, repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. When the Republican Party apparatus got into power in Congress, they had no plan of what their health care plan was going to be. I think there was not a plan for Roe here. The stories you laid out at the top of this segment are real stories. Women have died. Women's lives are on the line here because of this issue being sent back to the states and the bans that have been enacted. And so my question, and I will go to AG Nessel first on this, is mifepristone. Mifepristone is currently still being litigated in the courts. It is still available across the country, but it is currently being litigated. AG Nessel, what is the plan in not just Michigan, but the plan from AGs across the country? And how are you working with your governor if, in fact, mifepristone is struck down and it is no longer available? Are you all stockpiling? Can you just break it down for us?
Well, let me first say that the Democratic Attorneys General Association is sort of unique in that we are an organization where you can't even get endorsed by our organization without being a pro-choice candidate or AG. And what we've all done together is to fight on this very issue. And that was, of course, fighting against the Texas case, which sought to eliminate the FDA's ability to approve of the manufacture and distribution of mifepristone. And we are continuing to fight. There was a Washington case that was filed by AG Rosenblum and one of our fellow AGs in Washington State. And we've had a great deal of success on that. Now, ultimately, this is going to be decided by the United States Supreme Court. There's no question about it. And it's the first time where we're going to see politics interjected into whether or not a drug is deemed to be safe to use. We know that abortion medications are safe to use, and they have been for over 20 years. But this is the Supreme Court will be injecting their moral and ethical approval of a drug instead of the safety of a drug, which of course is important on every level. But here what we're doing in Michigan is, I know that, it's not just a matter of stockpiling, it's a matter of seeing if we can actually produce this medication by other means here in the state of Michigan so that it remains accessible. Even in a state like mine, where, we have total and complete abortion rights, it's not very helpful if you can't obtain an abortion. And in most counties in Michigan, a surgical option just simply is either very hard to procure or not available at all. So we need to make sure that this remains legal, but we need to make sure that we have available supplies of it in Michigan. And I know that our Governor Whitmer, is working each and every day to do everything she can. She even has her own commission, a task force that we put together just to brainstorm on how we're going to ensure that people retain the ability to have reproductive health care in our state.
Ellen, can I ask you about the pressure that this is put? You spoke about the legal side of things from Oregon's point of view. Can I just ask you about the providers themselves? I remember being in Pennsylvania when the Dobbs ruling came down, and I was actually spending the day in an abortion clinic, and the doctors there were just in tears because they knew what was going to happen with the influx of people coming from other states, even if they managed to protect abortion rights in Pennsylvania. What kind of pressure is this putting on providers in Oregon as they take in people from other states around the country?
Huge pressure. It's unbelievable. And I honor our healthcare providers, and in particular here in Oregon, our academic institution, the Oregon Health Sciences University, is actually taking in medical students and residents and fellows to make sure, from other states, to make sure that if you're going to a medical school or in a program in a banned state, you can actually obtain some training so that you know how to do these procedures when you're able to, wherever you choose to live. So that's really huge. But what I've talked to a number of doctors here who literally are burning the midnight oil, trying to make sure that they can address all of the and provide care to all of the individuals who are coming to Oregon from states like Texas. We're not just talking about Idaho. We're talking about South Dakota, Florida, Louisiana. Individuals coming from all over the country. Think of what it does now. I'm feeling bad for the doctors, but I'm particularly feeling bad for the individuals and their families who have to come up with funds. They have to leave their children. It's an absolutely disastrous situation. It's not sustainable. And on the subject of mifepristone, I want to say we didn't even know what that word was at the time of Dobbs. And frankly, I'm not so sure the Supreme Court did either. It's critical to have the gold standard, which includes that drug as well as misoprostol. We know those two drugs together make it possible to have early abortions. And that's what everybody wants, ideally. So let's make sure that we not only stockpile, but that, as my wonderful sister colleague said, that we make sure that we are looking at all the different ways that we can continue to serve our pregnant people who either live here and they're next door neighbors, they're our kids, they're, my daughter, they're so much need, but in particular states like mine, we need to be making sure that those states that are Republican colleagues, frankly, are not doing a good job of leading in this instance. We want to make sure that their people can come to us so that we can serve them. And our doctors, our OBGYN, are absolutely heroic.
Democratic Attorneys General Ellen Rosenblum and Dana Nessel, thank you both so much for being on this morning.